listen, we've got a great show for you today. Going to hit some what I would say are some very important topics this afternoon. And I want you to do me a favor. I always say this to you when I feel like every show is a great show, but when we're specifically dealing with some issues that I feel are worthy of a family listening together, worthy of friends listening together, I ask you to call some friends, bring your relatives in from the other rooms. I want you to listen to this show in particular together. We're going to be talking to a young lady and her attorney. This young lady was adversely affected by a prescription drug, and we're going to really bring this information to light for you. So you got a little time, call your friends and family, tell them to get on Philly's Favor. We need to hear this program today. That being said, let's prepare to move forward. I want to welcome into the pastor's office this afternoon, Talia Smith and attorney Thomas Bosworth. And I need you to understand this. All of us are going to deal with some medical challenges in our life. And we believe that we can trust the medical professionals that are taking on our particular case. I always have shared this with salespeople that I've trained. I've been in radio for 30 years, and mostly I've been on the sales side, but I've always trained my salespeople. I've given them this metaphor. We are radio doctors. Our job is to prescribe solutions for our clients' marketing pain. And they're trusting us to deliver results for them. And so in the case of a medical professional, it's the same thing. We're going to them with something that's hurting us, something that's bothering us, and we're trusting them to prescribe a solution, to come up with a solution. They're the ones that have gone to school. They're the ones that are the experts. They're the ones that the state boards have said have the ability to work with us. We're trusting them to do right by us. Sadly, it doesn't always work that way. And today, you're going to hear a little bit about that. Talia, Tom, welcome into the pastor's office. How you doing this afternoon?
Great, Pastor. Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us. I'm well.
So, Talia, you're a Massachusetts native. You're from Norwood, 44 years old. You had a medical issue, and you were prescribed by the nurse practitioner a drug called Cipro. So just to set the stage for this conversation, why don't you share with us what you were dealing with and just unfold that story for us?
Okay, so in April 2021, I was diagnosed with a simple UTI. I was not someone that typically had UTIs at all. So it's not like this was a recurring thing. And I had a very low bacteria count, but it was an actual UTI nonetheless. I was prescribed ciprofloxacin, and I asked the person that was prescribing it to me, seems like it's a little strong considering my small bacteria count, and I think, Cipro is a strong antibiotic. Is there anything I need to be aware of before I take this prescription? Because historically, I just do not do well with antibiotics. Actually, most people don't. And I was told, no, there's nothing you need to know about this antibiotic. It's very safe and effective. We use it all the time for urinary tract infections. So I said, okay. I went to the pharmacy. I took the prescription. 3 pills in, 3 pills every 12 hours. So it was the second day. I couldn't walk. I could not walk. I had to go to the emergency room and said I could not walk. I could not put any pressure on my left leg. I couldn't figure out what was happening to me. I wasn't making the connection that it was an antibiotic. And when I went to the hospital, I said, I don't know what happened to me. I woke up. I can't walk. I have pain everywhere. I have these lightning bolts coming out of my head, like electricity, like zapping pains everywhere. I feel terrible. So the only thing that's changed is I've taken an antibiotic, but I don't think that has anything to do with it. The ER doctor turned around and said to me, are you taking Cipro? So you can imagine how hysterical I became when he said that. And I said, yeah, why, and he said, do you know what a black box warning is? And I said, no. And so that's the day I became informed. And he told me about the black box warning for Cipro and how it has a lot of adverse effects. And, don't worry. Go home, take some ibuprofen, which is actually contraindicated with fluoroquinolone, but that's another story. Go home, take some NSAIDs and rest, and you'll be better in 3 to 4 days. So that's what I did. I went home. I trusted the doctor again. And I trusted my doctor, then the ER doctor, who seemed to know what he was doing. And I just got worse over time. Within 3 weeks, I could not walk. 3 months. Within 3 months, I could not walk at all without a walker. I had my bed brought down to the first floor because I couldn't even walk up any stairs. And within 5 months, I had lost over 50% of my body weight. I was 60 pounds, and I was admitted to hospice only 5 months after taking Cipro.
Well, first of all, we give God praise that you're still here, because most people who enter hospice, it ends up a different result. So we're thankful for that. But I want to highlight the point you just made. 3 pills in, and you started to feel the negative effects of the drug. But what intrigued me in your opening statement is that you asked the nurse practitioner, was this drug too strong for the symptoms that they diagnosed? Had you heard of Cipro before?
I'd heard of it, and I thought it was strong, but I'm not a doctor. Just things you think,
Right.
So I was kind of just like running that past her, and I wasn't completely sure, but.
So you go to the emergency room. The first thing that the doctor says is, "Are you taking Cipro?" So now you know something's wrong. He brought up a black box warning. Now, why don't you share with our listeners? And Tom, maybe you can give it from a legal perspective. What is a black box warning?
A black box warning is the strongest label the FDA gives to a prescription. And if it has a black box warning, that usually means there is some serious, permanent, disabling side effects on the drug. So it's the most severe warning you can give the prescription. Go ahead.
So Tom, help me understand this. If the black box warning is so severe, why is the drug even prescribed? Even if it's only a small, minute percentage of those that use it could have these side effects, why would we still have it out on the market?
Well, you should ask Bayer that question. They're the ones who make the drug, but it doesn't make any sense. Every drug has side effects, but the question is the juice worth the squeeze? What's the risk versus what's the benefit, right? And in this case, it's totally out of whack, because with Talia, you have a simple UTI, which frankly shouldn't even have been prescribed any antibiotic at all. But you have a simple UTI, and then you give somebody a drug that can permanently disable them for the rest of their life. That doesn't add up, right? That doesn't make sense.
So Talia, after 3 months, you're experiencing almost life-ending issues. Can you walk our listeners through your experience with the medical professionals that you had to encounter? I'm sure there were lots of medical appointments, lots of opinions. I mean, just talk to us about what all of that was like, because prior to this, you were healthy and living an average life. Talk to us.
Yeah. So I'll just summarize. I was never sick before, and I didn't need the medical system. And then the medical system failed me, right? I got sick and from an antibiotic. And when I talked to my actual primary care doctor at the time, brought the FDA warning, because then I printed it. I became, knowledgeable, seeing that it should have only been used as last resort. I was trying to make sure that other patients weren't prescribed this medication and the same thing would happen to them. My doctor flat out said, no one has ever had a reaction like that before, and that she was going to continue to prescribe it because she always has, and it was very safe and effective. Like she didn't want to hear it. And then I entered the medical system. I'll call myself a frequent flyer at that point, right? I was there all the time in the emergency rooms, admitted 3 times, not understanding these weird symptoms that I was experiencing. They seem all over the place and don't really connect. They were given the term constellation of symptoms every time I was seen. And they would say, and this irks me to this day, that my constellation of symptoms don't fit nicely in a box. So they didn't know how to treat me, and all they could do was treat my symptoms. Everyone was ignoring me about the fact that I had been poisoned by ciprofloxacin. They wanted to point it on maybe I had migraines, like things that totally weren't related at all. And then, I live in Massachusetts, so I don't know if you know anything about this state, but some of the best hospitals in this country are in this state. And, I went to these hospitals, and it was the same thing. I'd go in, they'd talk to me, and then all of a sudden they would send psychiatrists in. This isn't in my head. I can't walk. I can't do anything. I can't eat. I'm rapidly losing weight, and everybody brushed me off. They didn't take me seriously because they didn't understand, and they didn't want to understand. And the biggest example I can give you, the biggest slap in the face is my last time in the hospital before I was sent home on hospice. I was there with my husband, and we were begging for a feeding tube because I was losing weight, and I knew that if I didn't eat or drink, I was going to die. You can only live so long without food and water. So please, please give me a feeding tube. On the 2nd or 3rd day, they came in and said to me and my husband, by her lap, she looks okay. And go home and come back in 2 to 3 weeks. That's when we estimate her organs will start failing. And that's when we'll give her a feeding tube.
2 to 3 weeks. Wait a second. 2 to 3 weeks, and you were already below 100 pounds.
Oh, yeah. I was in my 70s at that point. I was almost in the 60s.
Wow.
And they said I was okay. That on paper, I looked okay. And my husband was crying. He said, look at her. She's clearly not okay. She's skin and bones. She's in excruciating pain. And I don't know how they came up with that estimate by my labs and my kidney and liver that in 2 to 3 weeks, that's when it would start failing. I don't know. They're the doctors. But I was so frustrated that you want me to go into organ failure to come back and to have some help. My mind to this day still is blown. And, I say it all the time. The people that were nicest to me in this entire situation was hospice. It was the first time I encountered any care or concern for me as a human being, right? I wasn't just another patient. It's the first time I ever had people listen to me and listen to my story and actually believe me. I couldn't believe these people believed me because the whole medical system didn't, And I thought to myself, I think this is a good topic for your show and this whole medical system. Why did it take me to that point to get that kind of care and concern? That I was on my deathbed. Why can't patients get that kind of care before they get to the end? It blows my mind. It is not okay. Every step along the way, I was failed until I got to hospice. They actually had a huge hand in saving my life. They call me their miracle patient. It is a miracle that I am here, but I have no faith in the medical system at all anymore.
Tom, I'm going to come to you in just a moment, but I got to explore another point here. Talia, you're married, you've got a family. Talk about how all this experience, how it impacted your husband, how it impacted your family. They now got to watch this young woman move into hospice care.
It devastated my family, especially my husband. He's a disabled veteran. He's a quadriplegic, and I was his primary caretaker for 10 years. So I took care of him. And when I got sick, I couldn't take care of myself, and I couldn't take care of him. So it put the two of us in an extremely vulnerable situation, and obviously the thought that he may lose me my children and thought that they may lose me. One came home from college. One came home from the Marine Corps to say goodbye to me. I said my goodbyes to them. It was absolutely horrible experience. Absolutely horrible. And I thought that was the last time I was ever going to see them. And that's obviously not the case, but that's what I thought at the time.
I got to tell you, this story is riveting. And you know what I'm going to do today? We're just going to take the whole show. We're going to take the whole time and just talk to you today. So if both of you can just stay with me for just a couple minutes, we're going to take a break. Let's play a little bit of music, and then we'll be right back with Talia Smith and Tom Bosworth.
Here, Philly's favorite 100.7 FM.
Welcome back to the pastor's office. We are here continuing our conversation with Talia Smith and Tom Bosworth. Talia had devastating side effects from a drug called Cipro, a drug she took that was prescribed to her for a UTI. And she went from healthy to not being able to walk to ending up in hospice care. Now, Talia, before I get to Tom, obviously you have survived. One, tell us what was done to bring you out of that hospice situation. And then two, what's your current health state of affairs?
Okay. And can I add just one thing at the end for the viewer?
Sure. Absolutely.
I always have to put my pitch about antibiotics at the end. So how I came out of hospice, ironically, I think it's because I had no food or water for 1 month at all. They said I couldn't survive, but I think somehow it did some reset to my system. I would never advocate that to anybody. I think that helped physically, but my husband also fought tooth and nail for my life for mast cell stabilizers. I developed mast cell activation syndrome after taking Cipro, which, let's just say, to make the long story short, it makes you allergic to everything in the world. The smells, perfumes, foods. That's why I couldn't eat. That's why I was experiencing all that pain and having all these issues. My husband fought tooth and nail to get me mast cell stabilizers. And within 1 week of just taking drops of one of those stabilizers, I was eating a pudding, right? A pudding in 1 week. So 5 weeks without food. And so from there, we just turned it around, like, let's try some baby food because I had issues swallowing and stuff. And then let's try human food, like adult food. And then that got me to, 80-something pounds. So I'm still very underweight. I'm 77 pounds right now. But I would say that plus I was doing everything in my power. Sorry, trying not to get emotional. Everything in my power not to leave my husband behind because I took care of him for so long that I did not know what was going to happen to him after I was gone. And so that kept me fighting the whole time, like, what will happen to him? Even though I can't do anything for him now, I just didn't want to leave him. So that plus, the physical things I'm talking about, that got me to where I am today. And today, I'm not great. I'm on palliative care. Yes, I'm not in hospice care, but I'm on palliative care. I'm in a hospital bed. I can't walk without a walker. And even then, I can only walk, a small amount of steps. I'm in a wheelchair. I'm still underweight. I'm still struggling with mast cells. But yes, I'm thankful I'm still alive. I'm just not in great condition.
So
go ahead.
So Tom, listen, and Talia, I will come back to you. Tom, when you hear about this, when you get the call about, when you get the call about this case, first of all, from a human perspective, forget your law degree, forget any of that. First of all, from a human perspective, how do you feel? And then, armed with all of the education you've received and the ability to pursue legal action, tell us what steps you took.
Well, I just remember thinking, I can't imagine how Talia feels right now. She's totally bedbound, unable to move and live a normal life, and she's been taking care of her husband who's been disabled anyways from serving our country. So that was my first reaction, was just how are these two getting on? And then when I started to dive deeper into what actually happened and how little she was told about the drug, I was just dumbfounded, because it's, in my world, it's basic malpractice law 101 that when you're prescribing a drug to a patient, you have to tell them all of the side effects and all of the possible adverse reactions, whether they're rare or not. And you have to tell them, give them an informed idea of what could happen. None of that happened here. None of it. I mean, the opposite, really. Talia was reassured it was fine. She wasn't told anything about the black box warning, which, by the way, not every drug has a black box warning. This is serious stuff. So the fact that she wasn't told any of this is really nothing I've ever seen before. And that's separate and apart from the broad issue of why do we have antibiotics like this that can do this to people that are being prescribed for very simple things like a UTI. So we have filed a case against her healthcare providers and against the drug maker, and we're going to turn over every stone and make sure that justice is achieved, because unfortunately, and Talia knows this, she's not the only one this has happened to.
Wow. So as you've done your research, Tom, let's give our listeners some information regarding that. Have you kind of gotten any type of numbers as to how many people this has impacted over the last several years?
Well, there's a database. The FDA basically receives complaints from patients. They're called adverse event reports whenever there's a situation like this. But of course, that only accounts for the people who have gone through the process and are aware that process is available. And it doesn't account for people who don't know necessarily that what's happened to them is from the antibiotic. But I don't know the exact numbers off the top of my head, but we're in the realm of hundreds or thousands of people. And I think Talia has communicated with a lot of those folks, and there's a growing community throughout the country that's standing up for this.
I just want to add one thing about the numbers. So Tom is correct. The numbers are very underreported. The FDA themselves has said their system isn't 100%. It's not validated. It's self-reporting. But even with that being said, so let's say a faulty data system, the FDA system does say that fluoroquinolones are the drugs that have the most adverse reactions of any other drug class. It's actually 4 times more than any other drug class on the market. And the number 2 drug isn't even an antibiotic, right? So that shows you the dangers of fluoroquinolones, that they have the most adverse effects of any drug out there.
And just to provide some context, this drug is being prescribed to millions of people. Millions of people, still millions of prescriptions going out for Cipro and the drugs in this class. So when we're talking about hundreds, maybe thousands of people that have been impacted, it's a small percentage of the amount of prescriptions that go out. But guess what? It is tragic and it is devastating to the individuals and the families that have to then become caretakers to people who previously were caretakers themselves. Guys, I really thank you for joining us today to talk about this issue. Tom, how long do you think it's going to take for this case to kind of make its way through all the different levels in the legal system to get some remuneration for Talia?
Well, Bayer and the healthcare providers could come forward today. They know what happened and they know what occurred, and they could come forward today and take responsibility. I will be about 98 years old before that ever happens, I think. And I can tell you, having gone up against big corporations for my whole career, 0 times would be the amount of times that's happened. So we're going to go through the court process, and it'll be a couple years probably before we get in front of a jury. But they can atone for what they've done at any time. But unfortunately, these companies don't always operate with a moral compass, so to speak. I hope that's different here, but no guarantees.
Well, Talia, I want you to hang in there. and know that we are
I just
praying.
have one more thing
Yes, go right ahead.
to your viewers, because I've become a huge advocate, viewers, like you're saying that, listeners. I always say, I've been advocating since, I got on palliative care to make sure people don't end up like me. So the people that are listening to your program, I always say, make sure you actually need an antibiotic before taking one. So many times people are prescribed antibiotics and they don't need them. So do not take antibiotics if you don't need to. Secondly, triple check what your doctor tells you. Don't believe, don't put all your faith into them. Just because they have an MD at the end of their name doesn't mean they know everything. You have to check for yourself. So those are the things I would say to the folks that are listening to protect themselves from something like this happening to them. And any medication they're on, check if it has a black box warning, Google it, go to the FDA website, whatever that is, just to protect themselves. So.
Talia Smith, Tom Bosworth, thank you for joining us in the pastor's office today. And Talia, we're praying for you. We're going to continually lift you up in prayer. We know that God is a healer, and we believe that healing can absolutely come to your situation. God bless you both.
Thank you.